Welcome back to Post-Traumatic Thriving, this great podcast where we talk about trauma. Tanya Brown.
Hi. So excited. I mean, my God, we have such a phenomenal guest. I'm so excited about this experience.
Well, you tell us about her.
So Jessie Buttafuoco, the daughter of Joey Buttafuoco and Mary Jo Buttafuoco, part of the Amy Fisher story back in 1992. And so dive into this experience. It's great information, stories of trauma, tragedy, hope, a lot of laughter in here because we have to keep serious topics, light. And hopefully some of you will be able to relate to this on some level.
I think so. Welcome back, Jessie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Episode 100. Getting into the good stuff.
We're on number 3. Number 1 was where we got to know you as a little girl, 9 years old, as part of this family where Amy Fisher shows up on your family's doorstep and shoots your mom. Unbelievably tragic. And your experiences of a little girl. If you've missed that episode, I would encourage you to listen to it to really get the depth of this story. And then our last episode, episode 2, we talked about the dive stage, where I have in my hand, I grabbed it off the bookshelf. This is very triggering to Tanya Brown. Are you triggered by this?
No, because I'm currently in school learning about all that.
Okay.
And actually, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
It's helped me put legitimacy to my crazy.
Well, there you go. Okay. Nice
stamp of approval. Oh, that's what that was.
Well,
this is what that is. That's what that was.
I should mention the title. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, also called the DSM-5. And it was on the bookshelf behind Jessie, traumatizing Jessie the whole time. But when we're referring to that, it's a big, thick book. But the thing is that this is where things are diagnosed. What's kind of, I don't want to say crazy, but crazy about your story is that you kind of checked all the boxes in terms of your story is so insane. I mean, it really is, that it left you with this dive stage that was horrific. You're falling apart on every level.
But trying my hardest to keep it together.
Yeah.
Even despite my best efforts.
Yeah. And this episode is survive. It's getting back on our feet. Okay. We've talked about the alcoholism and the drugs, the pot, the eating disorders. What did I miss there? Cocaine. I mean, there's a lot of self-medication there.
Absolutely.
And we want to talk about, just what it took to survive, to just want to stay alive. You even went through bouts of depression, deep depression. You're talking about thinking about suicide. And we talked a lot about the media and how that didn't really help your situation. Let's talk about survival. And when I say the word survive, I mean, what kind of comes to your mind?
Immediately what comes to mind is that I started surviving 4 years ago.
Okay.
When I had my mental breakdown, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual breakdown.
30 years later. And that I now have the opportunity to survive. Before, I was just trying to get through shit.
Okay.
And I was just running, going, succeeding, going, not thinking about the past at all. Like, the Tasmanian devil just, or the Roadrunner, keep going. And just trying to live through that. But I never got the cues on how to cope with it or how to survive it. I don't even know how I got through all that, but all I know now, I feel like I'm surviving because now I'm actually utilizing tools in order to cope with the triggers and the stresses that continue to come up, but it doesn't affect me the way that it once did.
Okay. So let's talk about the low point, and that you mentioned 3 or 4 years ago was kind of, where it all, it all kind of came, you hit rock bottom, I guess. Yeah. Is that fair?
100%.
Okay. So talk about that low point, hitting rock bottom, and then what steps you've took to get into the survival mode.
Great. So hi, my name is Jessie and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jessie.
Hi, Jessie.
Hi, Jessie.
And all I know is that when it was towards the end of I feel like a whole new person now than I did before. But when I was really at the end there and I was 35 years old, a lifetime of unprocessed trauma, heavily in addiction, alcoholism, and just poor choices in terms of like myself. I had no self-esteem. I hated myself. I was hopeless. I had no future. It was really, really bad. And by the grace of God, a family member was like, hey, why don't you try a 12-step program? And I was like, hilarious. I need a gym membership. I'm not a freaking alcoholic over here. Or I thought maybe I needed like a diet, or I knew something needed to change, but I was just so stuck where I just didn't know what to do. And I couldn't even get off the couch. I'm a smart person. Okay. I'm very successful. I've done a lot of things, but I would say that last year, like that 35th year of my life, I just really deteriorated and isolated myself and was not doing proper nutrition. It was just pretty much, I call myself a trash can with a dress on because I was just pouring trash in all day, including media that I'm watching. I'm watching true crime productions and Law and Order. So it's just death and murder and just sadness. Like I was not doing myself any favors here. And I see that now. But I think, it was a slow process for me. I am also someone that like, if there's a problem, let's fix it and let's move on. Like I've always been that way. And I couldn't do that with myself. And it was extremely frustrating. And, so I quit drinking, but nothing changed. I was still extremely depressed. I was still extremely suicidal. I started attending 12-step meetings, which was proving to be very helpful for me. Because even though in the last episode, I talked about being a peer health educator in college. So I was very informed about alcoholism, about, binge drinking and the effect. I was informed about drugs. I know what a blood alcohol content. I know how many drinks are considered an ounce and this, I did the work on it. I just never really thought that it applied to me. I didn't think I had a problem drinking. I just did it because I didn't have a problem drinking. I was good at it.
I'm nothing like you.
Yeah, and also back to that conversation of stigma, I thought an alcoholic was someone that was a homeless person on the street with tattered clothes and, talking to the voices in their head. Right. And I was doing all of that just without tattered clothes. But I just didn't see myself as that was my problem. But I had no other tools. I didn't know what to do. And so I wound up going to a meeting. And for the first time, I started hearing people like say things that just resonated with me that I just didn't hear other people say before, or just like feelings. I was never good at talking about my feelings. If someone asked me how I was fine. I never got deep with it ever. Certainly not how I'm getting with y'all here. And that's something I think that, added to my demise. But I just started, relating to people, and like my entire life, I've never been able to like feel a part of, because I've always been at the center of the donut. A lot of people that I found in 12-step programs have this inner feeling of never being good enough or not feeling like they are a part of because they're on the outside. Well, my case was I was directly in the center and everyone's looking at me. And so I never really I've always felt different than other people, just based on that. And hearing other people's stories of trauma and addiction and alcoholism and like their stories was like, oh, maybe I am an addict. Maybe I do have this thing called alcoholism because I think the same way. And I did the same shit last Thursday, or whatever it is. I just started hearing people tell my story. And I'm a big believer in messages from the universe and things like that come through people. And so for whatever reason, I'm not, I didn't read a book and like, wah, aha moment. It was people and ordinary people, not people on TV, not people whose stories got blown out of proportion and turned into 2020 episodes. This was, Bob B and, hi Tammy, whatever their name is. I don't even know because it's anonymous.
Yeah. They're extraordinary.
Yeah. And even in that space, I was able to be semi-anonymous, which for the first time in my life,
you had that.
I had that.
I just want to make sure where everybody knows, because it wasn't explicitly said. We're talking about Alcoholics Anonymous. Am I right?
Yes, I just generally like to say 12-step program. I personally was in the AA community, but it's something where we don't talk about it on levels of press, radio, and film. And that's because, if a public figure were to go out there and say, yes, I'm a member of AA and this is what I do, and that may be my case today, but in 10 years, I might lose my shit and start drinking again. And if the masses hear that, well, obviously AA didn't work for her. It's not going to work for me.
I see.
That's why that's in place.
Thanks for the education. Okay.
But it's a thin line for me because that program gave me so many coping tools.
Okay.
In addition to a lot of other mental health help that I sought.
Okay.
But, and that's why I say 12-step program, because there's a lot of them out there, whether Narcotics Anonymous, Codependence Anonymous. I mean, there are, but for me, I never was given steps on how to deal with shit.
Deal with
life. So I found it to be extremely helpful for me.
Thank you. Because I've actually attended a few, I'll just say it, Alcoholics Anonymous meetings with family and friends, just because I want to be supportive. I've got a lot of bad genes, but alcohol abuse is not one of them, fortunately for me. But I didn't know that. So I guess that's important to point out for not just me, but for everyone. That
it saves lives.
Refer it to as recovery or 12 steps and leave it at that. And leave the anonymous intact. Okay. Fair enough. Thanks. Okay.
And even, there's 12-step programs, there's Smart Recovery, there's Celebrate Recovery. So there's so many. So for anybody who's listening right now, if you're going through trauma and it's showing up in your life in this way, reach out to us. My God, we've got resources for you. You're not in this thing alone.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for that. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
And so I just started kind of listening to other people's stories and starting to feel better about myself, and that I'm not just this degenerate, and that it's not a moral thing. I have an actual disease. My limbic brain has gotten bigger than my rational brain, and it's calling the shots at the moment. And I needed to do a couple things to get the rational part of my brain back. I didn't know it at the time. But as I'm there and listening to people's stories and hearing these like little glimmers of hope, I was sitting there with a notebook and just writing down. I mean, I have thousands of notebook pages of one-liners that I've heard in these meetings, of just little snippets that like help me deal with something or get through the day or whatever it is. And so I kind of just really slowly, because I also didn't think I belonged there. I was like, that's cute, but like, y'all have an answer, tell me what it is and bye. Like, but it didn't work like that either.
It was only so easy.
Right. And so I was doing that for a long time. I continued to do that. But then about 8 months into not drinking, I was still doing everything else, smoking, pot, Adderall, like I was still a buzzing mess inside my head. But I wasn't getting any better. If anything, I was still deteriorating. My depression got even worse. I think I was chemically so messed up that I eliminated that substance, but it still was like, girl, what are we doing here? We're so unbalanced. That 8 months into not drinking, I wound up signing up for an intensive outpatient program, which, so I had to like check into, a facility, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. every day, and sitting there with tweakers and heroin addicts and just, really humbled myself. Cause like, I also am like, that's not me. I don't need that. Meanwhile, no, I fucking need that. And I need to sit with this tweaker right now because Blanca is telling me some shit about her life. And, it just put a lot of stuff in perspective for me. And for the first time at that intensive outpatient program, I started to understand the science of addiction and disease of the brain. And I started to understand the reward center of my brain. And I started to understand dopamine and serotonin and cortisol. And like, they started just the not academics of it, but just understanding that it wasn't just me losing my shit because I wasn't good enough at it. It just really started helping me, I think, realize that this is beyond me, that there is a solution. And it also helped me accept some parts of myself that I had been battling of like, that's not me. No, we're not that. No, I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have a drug problem, blah, blah, blah. Today, I'm an alcoholic. I got drug problems, I'm okay with it now because I've accepted it.
Yes.
I've processed it and I've found power in it. But I didn't have that in my first year of trying to crawl my way back and out of the grave.
Wow.
Because I've qualified to be in a mental institution, but my own personal stigma would not allow me to get that level of care for help, even though your girl needed it. But it's my trust issue. I didn't want to what happened to you when you went to the psych ward and you get a phone call from the Inquirer saying, give us a scoop or we're going to tell everybody where you are. Like, I was extremely fearful of that. That happened to her. Do you know
Oh,
that?
yeah.
So fucked up.
It's in there. It's in your
it's in the
book.
book.
Yeah. And actually when I read that, I was like, me too. That's why I didn't get any help.
Yeah, that was scary.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I can't have that headline. My family's had so many poor headlines. I cannot be the one to add another, like that's at least what I told myself. So even like this was, I still had not shared my story. I had not talked to people. And I remember this intensive outpatient program. I had asked them to keep my name anonymous because there's a big sign-in sheet that all these tweakers and heroin addicts, everyone's name's on it. And the first day I got there, mine, Buttafuoco, big right there. And I was petrified. I was embarrassed. I was like, someone's going to recognize that. Someone's going to call the news. I'm like getting a physical reaction right now because I'm remembering it as if it was happening. And I just remember being like, can you guys take that off? And it was like some stupid Medi-Cal poor people insurance. They're like, no, we can't, And I was like, but it was the first time that started to help me get okay with, I have this public name and I'm fucked up and it's okay. Plain and simple. Like it's figure it out. It is what it is. And it was I didn't really open my mouth all that much. I didn't share all that much. But I started to little tiny, clips here and there. And I never necessarily went into the Buttafuoco stuff and things like that. But it started to come out. One of the people saw my name that I was in there with and they're like, oh, any relation? And for me, that's the number one question that just sends me to a tizzy. Because if I say yes, people go, oh, and then get awkward and don't know what to say because usually what they have to say is negative. And so if I tell them, yes, I'm related to this person, they don't have anything nice to say. So then they get weird. And then I have to be like, yeah, and you thought you were fucked up kind of a thing. Yeah. Or if I say, no, I'm not related to them, they go, oh, what an asshole. Can you believe he's such a rapist? Blah, blah, blah. And so now people are just talking shit about my parents in my face because I lied to them and told them, no, I'm actually not related to this person. Yeah. I mean, using my ID at the supermarket, like, oh, Buttafuoco, any relation? Like, I'm just trying to get some tampons,
I didn't even
lady.
think about that.
Yeah, it's a lot. But then, like, how do I know that? Did your dad's dick get cut off? And I'm like, no, that's Bobbitt. Like, oh, did your, mom take out that figure skater? I'm like, no, that's Tanya Harding. And they're like, Bobbitt. And I literally have groceries in line. And then I'm like, oh, my dad had an affair and the teenager and then shot my mom in the face. And then everyone in the line behind me now was like, wait, when she just, and it's always, I just, groceries, it's like, so my name in a public space has always been a problematic thing for me, especially if it's on a roster or other people have access to it and I can't control their reactions.
And your name isn't like Brown.
Right. I mean,
it's not.
You
Brown.
get away with it more, right?
I do.
A little bit.
A lot more.
Yeah. So it's like, it's just.
Buttafuoco, it's like.
Well, I bet a lot of people are kind of wondering. Let me just ask you, did you ever think about changing your name?
I did.
And what was
there
that
was
all
one scene that I have of me sitting chain smoking cigarettes looking through a Yellow Pages. Remember those? People used to put contact information in a big book to find. And I just remember looking through names and being like, flipping and
do I want to be a Harris or a Hanson?
I almost was a Barclay. I thought that was fancy.
That's good, fancy.
And so what, you obviously didn't do that.
I came to the conclusion of
that's cute.
Because it was inescapable in a way of like, even if I were to drop my name, I still have it all here. I'm still dealing with it all.
I'm still me.
It's who you are.
Right. And eventually it's going to come out. Like I did for a while, just drop my last name and went with my middle name, which is Louise.
Oh, that's mine.
Horrible middle name. So a couple job applications when I was starting to, grow up and apply for jobs and things like that. It was weird. I'd either get called in because they wanted to see a Buttafuoco and then not get hired or whatever. But then I would put just Jessica Louise on my resume and it would be great. And I'd get hired and then I'd have to give them my ID and they're like, oh. And so
see, I didn't even,
that was a problem.
I didn't even consider all of this.
So
wow.
It just became like kind of harder. It was easier just to deal with the bullshit almost and try to skirt around with it or pretend that it's not me. And then now I'm at the place that said, fuck you, that's my name.
Yeah.
It's who I am. And y'all have a bad opinion about it. That's not my fault.
You were 9 years old, right. And here you are being treated as, a bad person, pick an adjective and give me a break.
Right.
Picking on a 9-year-old
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
In essence, is what we're talking about.
I'd be playing sports with my name on the back of the jersey, and you can hear the coach saying, "Get her, set and pick extra hard over there."
You're a
fuck with her.
kid.
Yeah. So I got
guilty
that a
by
lot.
association.
Mhm.
You know? Oh, it's horrible.
So all of that, I don't even remember where we were going or why we went off on that tangent.
Well, I just asked about changing your name,
Oh,
but I
changing
think
my name,
we kind of get it. Yeah. So back to the recovery.
So I'm finally now like semi-anonymous in an anonymous program, but as soon as I tell my story, people know right away.
Yeah.
But I've gotten okay with it. It is what it is. Like if you want to Google me, go ahead. I'm not worried about it anymore.
Exactly.
But I was worried about it for a long time. So I'm in this intensive outpatient program. I'm learning. I'm starting to clear out a little bit. I learned halt for the first time in my life. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I was like, I just never got the memo on how to be a person, like a basic human being. Like if you're hungry, you should have a snack, not smoke cigarettes and chew a bunch of Adderall. If you're tired, take a nap, girl. Don't do more cocaine.
Right.
If if you're lonely, call a friend, reach out, don't isolate further.
Don't isolate.
And so I was doing everything kind of opposite because I taught myself how to do it that way.
Yeah.
So let's just pause there because you're saying, I mean, you're popping off like popcorn with some brilliant comments. I'm just kind of slowing it down a little bit. Let's describe HALT for the listener.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Great.
So H is
H
for
is hungry.
Yeah.
And it's like basic. Honestly, think of it as what does the baby need?
right.
Nourishment, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So H is for hungry. And if you're hungry, what do?
You eat.
Eat.
Yeah. Instead of
fighting. Because me and my eating disorder is like, no, you're not eating today.
Yeah.
Or I would try to restrict or I'd binge on
so
the
healthy.
other side.
If you're hungry, eat instead of, depriving yourself.
Right.
H,
Or just a snack.
A is for
Angry.
anger. And what do you do with anger?
Breathe. Meditate. Go take
for
a walk. Go into the garden.
Punch
have a
something
tea.
like a pillow.
Yeah.
Okay. So H is for hunger. A is for anger. L is for
Loneliness.
okay. And you just said it.
Pick up the phone and reach out to a friend.
Beautiful.
Because I have the tendency, if I'm lonely, all of a sudden I'll get into self-pity mode of like, why aren't my friends calling me? Or they don't want me around. And I'll just wind up in this like deep, dark hole.
A bed with the cover over your
You
head.
just kind of spiral down to this dark.
Yeah, where
place.
if I just were to pick up a friend and be like, "Hey, girl, you want to go? Get happy hour somewhere?
Yeah.
I can eat. I can drink. I can go to happy hour, y'all. I have soda water, but I can still get the half price appetizer."
Exactly.
Okay. And then Okay. So H is for hunger. A is for anger. L is for
Lonely.
loneliness, and T is
Tired.
take a nap.
Got to take a nap.
Rest your body.
Yeah. Your body speaks to
Even
you.
meditate.
Yeah. Your body speaks to you. It's science proves too that, we all have to work. We all, are sitting in front of a computer or out in the community. Your brain shuts down, I think, like every 120 or every 190 minutes. There's a study on it where that's your body. And then you notice yourself getting agitated, irritable, hungry, angry, maybe not lonely, but hungry and angry. But it's like, that's your body saying, walk away from what you're doing, go in your car, close your eyes for 10 minutes or go walk around your building, just like disengage from whatever it is that you're doing. But people think that you need to stay up. The more you do, the more productive you are. And that much productivity actually decreases your productivity. So getting rest is critical. It's your body saying, I need to rejuvenate. I need to recharge.
Got it. Okay. So as you pop off with these survival skills, I may just kind of pause it.
Sure.
Because that's just great stuff. Is HALT in your book? I don't remember.
No, because this is before recovery. Yeah.
Okay. It's in my book, but it's out there and it's one of these very simple. This is not rocket science. You don't need to learn algebraic, formulas for this stuff. But the crazy thing is that while they're simple, they're not taught in school.
Right.
And so this is a great one. So
And that's what I'm telling you. I didn't even hear that acronym until 35 years old.
Right.
Because I'm sitting here with a bunch of tweakers learning it on a VHS tape that's being played, on the community TV.
Yeah.
And so for me, for others, it might sound like, oh yeah, girl, duh, but I'd never got that memo. And so when I heard these
It makes
terms
sense.
and I was just blown away of like, I try not to get down on myself because I am a smart person. But I was like, girl, it's so simple. I don't
But that's a great
Figure it
point.
out,
Don't get
right.
down on it. If you're 55 years old, you just heard about it. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's not a competition. And some things, I didn't hear about it till a long, I was in my 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So no big deal.
Yeah.
But the point is you got it now.
Yeah.
It's a great tool. So go rock and roll.
So just super tight-lipped still at that outpatient program, not really sharing my story at all or anything like that. Started to get a little bit more involved in the 12-step program, started, taking commitments and just starting to open up more. I also don't trust many people. And so I started to do that a little bit more and not get railroaded and exploited. And I was like, oh, okay. Just get my slow briety is what I call it.
Slow briety.
Slow process.
That's cute. That's a good term. I like that.
And so, I think after that, I graduated that program. And
When you say that program, the 12-step program?
No, the intensive outpatient program. It was like a 6-month program.
Gotcha.
So where I was intensively there 5 days a week for 3 months and then, twice a week and then once a week, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So really just doing a lot of work too that I hadn't done necessarily with my therapist at the time. Cause even that I had a therapist, but I wasn't telling her the truth, of things. And so I started to get honest for the first time in my life, which was terrifying. But the more I was honest, the more people were receptive to me. I learned how to be authentic, which was huge because I'm such a people pleaser. And all of this trauma, one of my trauma responses is just being the yes girl and saying, oh, whatever. I can give to everyone else, but when it comes to myself, I don't give anything. Yeah. And so I started to learn how to balance that, and just not sacrifice myself for the needs of others and start learning, what do I need, girl? It's okay to say no. I don't need to be your best friend and I'm not the queen of the universe.
No, it's a complete sentence.
Right. And I kind of just started processing it all, if you will, and had opportunities to just think about my shit. I was clearing out, my head wasn't so buzzing anymore with all the housewives telling me I'm worthless. I was able to chemically, I think my brain was starting to chill out a little bit too. And I was just able to think and look what happened to me.
Right.
Because I didn't do it before, ever.
Yeah. And I want to go back to our little friend here, the brain.
The brain.
I got a model of the brain in my hand if you're just listening. But we're again going back to the 3 brains, the reptilian, the mammal, and the human brain. And when you're traumatized, and there's no dispute over the fact you were traumatized times 3, the outer brain shuts down and it all it goes to the reptilian brain, its instincts. So in trying to survive, and the memories are distorted, all of that, and it's trapped in the reptilian brain. All this, emotional trauma is trapped there, basically, and you can't function normally with your reptilian brain. You can do it great if you're a lizard, but as a human, you've got to reboot the brain and get the memories out of there and get the processing out of there, back into the emotional and ultimately back into the human brain.
Right.
So that's what you're doing. You mentioned HALT, you mentioned the 12-step program. You talked about rehab program. I know you're close to your mom. I'm sure she had something to do with, you tell me, but with your recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Before she elevated my recovery to the next level. Cause at this point I was still in my crappy ass apartment with the cockroaches, still trying to heal and all that kind of stuff. And at that time, I was still seeking. I wanted to try everything I could to feel better. Cause it actually was painful. It's painful to process things. My emotion, my insides was so uncomfortable this whole time. And as I continued to peel off the layers of substances that were numbing that, it was painful. It was uncomfortable. It was just I just felt so icky inside and I just don't like feeling that way at all. And so I was I want to feel better, but I know, Pinot Grigio is not going to be the one to help me out. So what can I do differently? And so I took classes on meditation and did Reiki healing and saw some lady that did my light and aligned my chakras. I went for it.
Awesome.
I put the work in to try to do something differently than what I was doing. Cause obviously what I was doing wasn't working. So about a year into this sobriety game, I wound up, my mother was having some health issues, which was making me very worried. And so I pose the idea that we live together. And so we've been living together since then. And that honestly, I didn't think it would be, because she's my number one. I never want to disappoint her. I have like mom's approval. Like I still working on a lot of stuff with her, but you know, I kept a lot of myself, the bad parts of my journey from her, because I just felt she had too much on her plate. And I know it would devastate her to see her child the way I was, basically. And so I did a really good job of trying to hide it as best I could. But she's also very good because she's been to rehab herself. She went to Betty Ford. She has an ex-husband who's an addict, and both her children are addicts and have problems. And so she understands enabling, and she understands how, you know, these kids need to figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
So by this time I was at least trying to figure it out on my own, but I still needed a little help. And so when we moved in together, it wound up being amazing for my healing journey. Because I had a clean house. The girl is clean. When the day she got shot, the police came and they were literally like, something's not right here. It's too clean. Yeah. They cleaned up. You know, they were like, and like the whole neighborhood had to be like, no, that's just Mary Jo. You know, like they all knew she's like this ridiculously clean person. So just having a clean place to live was helpful. And
hygiene.
And not being afraid of, the cockroaches in my, cabinet every time I open it. Like that was huge for me. And it's disgusting to say, but it's where I was. And I'm not there anymore. So
it's your story.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I just was able to be held accountable a little bit more. I couldn't do my self-destructive behaviors right in front of her. In terms of like a lot of times when stressful moments come up, I'll try to restrict my food or like not eat. And she'll be like, eat a sandwich. Yeah. She'll like help me with that. And just healing in general. And I think honestly, us being together has helped her heal too and her calm down. And the more I'm learning through my own recovery process and in school, I'm able to give that knowledge to her because she suffered an extreme amount of emotional abuse from her husband, the paparazzi and just like her life and what that.
Yeah, she never signed up for any of this.
Oh, and still doesn't, but does it now because she's like, listen, I have people come to me all the time saying I'm inspirational and I've helped them, blah, blah, blah. Like she's doing phenomenal work with facial paralysis now and really helping people.
Nice.
Like, it's really phenomenal, but we've been able to heal together also, which is really great.
Which is special.
And some, I think, could look at it as not codependent because we are honestly two individuals. Like I do my thing, she does her thing. And then at dinner, we just talk shit, but a lot of it is talking about the past. And some people say we live in the past. But we've never processed our past. So we're kind of doing it together.
Screw the critics that say that kind of thing. Yeah. Screw the critics that say that kind of thing. Right. I mean, she
never received the mental health for anything either. And if I was exploited, she was exploited.
Exactly.
She tells me stories of networks that completely railroaded her. I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So what I'm kind of keeping a mental checklist. Let me make sure I got this right. You're in terms of your survival stage and what kind of got you to go from self-medication to self-care. That's really what we're talking about. Numbing the pain to facing things in a more healthy way. I heard a number of things. You talked about meditation, which is up in San Quentin. That's one of the two primary things. The first time I ever meditated in my life, I was holding hands with two convicted murderers.
Wow.
First time in San Quentin prison.
Wow.
So it's very powerful. And there's a whole science in it. In fact, in the other room, there's a binder of 12 articles out of, again, Harvard, where they talk about meditation. It resets, using my brain, little model, it resets the reptilian brain to the human brain. Just simple deep breathing is what's going on there. So I heard you mention meditation, and some people have a hang up in at San Quentin. We don't call it meditation; we call it grounding because some people get tripped up on the religious meaning of it. Yeah, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about deep breathing. So deep breathing, grounding, or meditation, prayer. Yep. Lamaze. I don't care what you call it. Well, Lamaze is deep breathing. That's what it just happens to be associated with childbirth. But deep breathing is what we're talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
I heard you mention that. I heard, reaching out for help with the 12-step programs. I've heard similar comments. I don't belong here. And kind of the humility to say, actually, I kind of do belong here. That's a big step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Radical acceptance.
Yep.
Radical
Radical
acceptance.
acceptance.
I love that.
Yep.
Okay. And I heard the treatment program, you graduating from that program. Okay. And I heard, what did I miss to just kind of quickly recap where we've gone so far?
That's pretty much it. You
Okay.
know, the light,
The
reading,
IOP.
you know, just, the
IOP.
intensive outpatient program.
intensive
It's like
outpatient.
that rehab.
Oh, okay.
And the Reiki,
you know what a
the
big thing too?
chakras.
Yeah.
I started speaking on panels at mental institutions.
Oh, wow.
Which was very interesting.
Awesome.
But that's healing.
Very.
Started
sounds like you
sharing
started
my
to
own
talk
story.
about it
I
more.
did. I started
Yeah.
finally. I started to talk about
Okay.
it more.
It's very cathartic.
Yes, and I kept getting positive responses, which was weird because that was not the case for my life. That's why I kind of shut up talking about it. Because I
Right.
never got positive.
Well, you got
responses.
Madonna on national TV mocking you and your family, basically, and the whole world cheering her. And to get some validation, some people that are a little more balanced and a little more empathetic to your situation, listening to your story and saying, wow, this young lady really went through some horrific stuff.
Right.
Let's be part of the cool team that assists and validates and listens, and actually more than assists you're assisting them.
Yeah.
And getting that feedback loop is really terrific.
Right.
You're giving them hope.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You're
And
giving them
that's-
hope.
And that kept happening. So then I was really so spiritually broken that I was like I started listening to like every pastor on earth, like from all different religions, denominations. I was just like, give me something other than the bullshit that's in my head.
Yeah.
And the themes that I kept getting from that was share your story, share your story, share your story. And like, because I would take notes, and I write in journals, and I look back, and so many times it's share your story. And I didn't want to. I said, my story sucks. Why? This is the shittiest story ever. I don't even want to live this story, let alone have to share it.
Right.
And so I just kind of started trying to do that more. And I got, the universe gave me opportunities to do that more. Speaking a lot at 12-step programs, speaking on these panels in these mental institutions, and being honest. I'd be like, listen, bros, everything on earth, I qualify to be in your robe right now.
Right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I should be sitting next to y'all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for the great
In shackles.
not, right.
In a padded room.
Yeah.
And so I think the more I said it out loud, the less taboo it became, the less shameful it became, the less embarrassing it became. And I was able to accept it and take it as mine.
Yeah.
And it's not, ABC's version of my story. This is my story, and it's my narrative.
Right.
And keeping it to myself almost killed myself.
Yeah.
But sharing it with others seems to help me and others. So I don't
Exactly.
understand that algorithm because I've never been good at math and science, but it works.
It
So
does
I'm going to
work.
keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Hence
does
why
work.
I'm even here.
What you just described, and it came organically from you. I was just sitting here listening, but what you did, I want to just call it for what it is. It's brilliant because and I didn't learn. I'm by the way, I want to be full disclosure. I didn't come up with this stuff. And in my book, and I don't want to say that as in I'm the author of these concepts. I'm not the author. I'm the observer that reported it in my book. So I want to be clear about that. But I call it the dynamic dual. What happens in San Quentin, what I was listening for, number one is grounding. And number two is what we call in prison, sitting in the fire, having these conversations. Sitting in the fire and grounding are the two dynamic duo that take these guys that walk into prison. They've committed horrible, violent crime. I mean, my first meeting there, when I'm meditating around the room, I'm holding hands with two convicted murderers. There's the rapist, there's the kidnapper, there's the bank robber. I mean, and a lot of them are in for life. And one guy came up to me and says, you know what? It just melted my heart because this guy came up to me and says, you know what? Dr. Bell, he called me Dr. Bell. I say, just call me Randall. It's okay, Dr. Bell. He goes, the rest of my life will be in prison, but it will be a good, honorable life. Wow is right. And what I'm listening for, you nailed it. It was those two sitting in the fire, having these ugly conversations. I'm sure it's not fun for you to wake up on a Sunday morning and drive all the way from LA to Orange County and talk about how crazy, your dad is and just this embarrassing, ugly stuff. But you're modeling the sitting in the fire, sitting there. And sometimes you laugh, sometimes you cry. hopefully more laugh, but whatever. But you sit in the fire, you talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're modeling that, and you brought up the grounding, and those are the two, in my opinion, tell me if you agree or disagree. Those are the two most important.
So I created the Tanya formula. The T in the Tanya formula is talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, it just metastasizes and you build resentment, and then the anger, and then addiction comes in, and harboring. I mean, it's poison to your body.
Yeah.
So talk about it.
And it's powerful.
Yeah. And while we're on it, anybody out there, my book, Post-Traumatic Thriving, but Tanya's book is far more important. Finding Peace Amid the Chaos. It's over your left shoulder to Jessie. And then I want to mention your mom's book again, Getting It Through My Thick Skull. I mean, there must be a good sense of humor metaphor in your family.
Yeah. Well, that title, because my grandmother would always tell my mom, because we're Irish family on that side. She's stubborn. She's real stubborn. She's a Taurus. My mom's a stubborn lady.
Yeah.
And she's like, when are you going to get through your thick skull, Mary Jo? When are you going to get through your thick skull, Mary Jo? And actually, when my mom woke up after being shot, the first thing she said was, good thing I have this thick skull. That saved her life from the bullet.
Wow.
Ricochet.
Wow.
Yeah.
So get this. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
And do you have a book out?
Not yet. It's in the works.
Okay.
I'm
We'll talk.
writing a memoir, but it's going slower than I thought because I'm visiting these places for the first time. So I'm finding I'm also healing through that too.
Were you reading other books while you're doing it kind of in the survival mode that you want to share?
Yeah, I read Tanya's book, Saved My Life.
Boom.
I'm not kidding.
You.
I'm not kidding. You saved my life. That book was a catalyst to me changing. I said, I actually have a problem. Let me go get some help.
Wow.
So thank you.
There you go.
That's the power of sharing your story, because if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have. My mom handed me that book. My mother handed me that book. That one.
Here,
They said, read this.
Show the.
Read this.
Yeah.
I was actively weeks away from probably killing myself. I read that book and it went bing.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do this.
Wow.
That's
the power of sharing your story.
Right.
Because when my co-author called me and he's like, you have a story. I'm like, I don't have a story. Everybody has a story. I don't have a story. And he goes, you have a story. And I really didn't think I did. And then he pulled the feelings, the emotions, the experiences out of me. I just wanted to transcribe my journal entries when I was in the psych unit, but he helped me write this beautiful book, and it has helped a lot of people. And I'm like, I'm choked. I'm moved.
Yeah.
It's amazing, honestly. And that's motivating me to now I want to write a book and get it out there so I can give that to the next person.
You need to. And I would certainly encourage that. This is the crazy thing. And I mean, you pay $20 and you get $20,000 worth of therapy right here. I mean, this book, you just said it.
Right.
This saved your life.
It did.
So in the survival stage, here's the way I think of it. Tell me if you agree. Trauma recovery and trauma survival trauma is not a solo exercise. Mm-mm. Talk to people. You talk to your mom. You moved in with your mom. You reached out to the various groups, whether 12 steps or recovery.
I upped my therapy game.
You read books.
Listen to a lot of podcasts is what I did. Because I have a hard time reading. Yeah.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of, there's a thing called Sobercast that I really enjoy. It's just people's stories over and over and over. A lot of spiritual, podcasts, a lot of just overcoming adversity kind of stuff, just a lot of good stuff. I think our social media feeds have the tendency to have a lot of bullshit on them sometimes. And I chose to get that done and started to follow body positive accounts, started to follow spiritual accounts, started to follow holistic psychology accounts. I started to follow things that I wanted to incorporate in my life and controlling that narrative as well, rather than the universal algorithm just sending bullshit my way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Beautiful. I call the homeless shelter down the street, the friendship shelter,
in Laguna.
They used to have this thing where I, and many others, would go in as volunteers. Every weekend I'd go in and I'd teach a class on life skills, like how to negotiate, time management, keeping a calendar.
I'll be there on Sunday.
I'll be there next week. I need all those skills. That's what I've got the lowest on your core IQ assessment. I'll join you.
I'm telling this guy, keep a calendar. And he goes, this is the homeless guy. And he says, I used to keep a calendar when I had a job. And I go, Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep a calendar. Maybe you'll get a job.
Right.
Right.
And what do I keep a calendar for? I said, well, right when you're going to get up and when you're going to breakfast and getting 3 resumes out a day.
Right.
And when's lunch and when's bedtime and, put down whatever you got on a calendar. It's part of the recovery process.
Right.
You started doing it, you got a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that is
I had
the
to
sole
start doing
reason.
that too, and it was extremely helpful for me. And now it's just like
pen to
every second
paper
day.
instead of like in the phone, pen to paper.
And what we're talking about
Excuse
is flooding. There's a chapter in my book called Experiment. You start experimenting. You're talking about chakras. Maybe that's for you. Maybe it's not.
Your girl got some crystals.
Maybe Hinduism is for you. Maybe it's not. But you check out.
Seeking.
Yeah, you're seeking and you're experimenting.
And it's
you're
not going to hurt.
Turning off.
Seek and ye shall find.
Bingo. Yeah. Words from the greatest man alive. So, and experiment. And not be is kind of being kind of taking control over your own life rather than just being fed the algorithms from Google.
Right.
Is what we're talking
exactly. And all this stuff, it's not going to hurt you. So it's like whatever works for you, try it out. Experiment.
Have an open mind.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing you were at a point in your life where the kind of the BS meter's on and you were looking for authentic or potentially authentic solutions.
I didn't know that that's what I needed, but that's wound up happening.
Okay.
To where now I am authentic. Not to a fault, because I love my authenticity. Other people can't handle it.
Yeah.
Other people that are not right with themselves cannot handle it. Because I call that shit out too.
Yeah.
I see right through it, and I just don't have time for it.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm happy to help you get to where you need to go to stop being so fake. But you got some healing you need to do, honey. So let's do. And I show up authentically wherever I go now. And other people's opinions do not affect me like they once did.
Yeah.
I could care less what other people think.
Because you're at peace with yourself.
And I know I'm a good person.
Yeah.
I've done the work.
Yeah.
I've did a lot of self-awareness.
Well, you were a good person before all of this. It's
You've
just
always been a good person,
you just got thrusted into something and inundated with all the negative chatter from everybody. But you have always been a good person.
And I want to help others, and I've always wanted to do that despite all the bullshit and the negativity that's come my way. And so that alone, like, I know I'm a good person. I've done the work on it. So at times of either fear or I'm going off the rails, X, Y, and Z, it's like, no, girl, you were on this planet. You're doing a great job, and you're doing it wholeheartedly with the right intentions.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, I don't care what you think about me.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not doing harm.
Yeah.
You're not doing any harm.
So let's say this afternoon you go to the grocery store and they check ID and they see your last name. And what's your response now?
Well, luckily now it doesn't happen all that often because
She's a Barclay now.
I'm a Barclay now. Now, could you imagine? I use the chip, so I don't even have to show my ID.
Oh, there you go.
But in times now where I do have to show an ID and someone says something about it, it's usually like traveling, especially if I go into New York, someone has something to say. But for the most part, it's kind of this like folklore history almost in terms of like, people recognize the name, but don't recognize the scandal it's associated to. I mean, it's been 30 years, right? And so it's like this weird shift in time where people that are older than me kind of remember. They're like, oh, yeah, I remember that. But people younger than me don't know.
Well, yeah.
Well, same in my case, too.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Probably 30 and over kind of thing.
Yeah.
I have.
Not even, because I'm 38. And I was 9 when it happened. So it's not like,
Okay, maybe 35, 40. I don't know. Well, the point is, everyone I've talked to in getting ready and doing my research for this weekend certainly instantly knows who you are, who your family are. Same thing with you, Tanya. But the younger generation is probably hearing this for the first time. Right. It's kind of like, reminds me when my son came home from high school. He says, Dad, there's the best band I've ever heard in my life. And I go, who? He goes, Led Zeppelin. Okay, dude. I was at the last concert in LA. So he goes, you were? So it's kind of that.
I've done some of that because I have younger audiences. Like with my podcast that I do, it's a younger demographic. I've done some other things in the public eye that's geared towards more younger demographics. And so people will go to their parents and say, oh my God, Jessie Buttafuoco. And their parents will be like, wait.
Yeah.
Like Mary Jo and Joey Buttafuoco. And they're like, I didn't even know that happened to you until my parents told me.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And so.
Now you have a podcast?
I do.
Plug it.
It's called Live Your Life Queen.
Okay.
Spelled Kween. And basically it's, listeners from around the world, they'll write in with questions, and me and my co-host Chelsea will just talk about it. My best friend Chelsea, who's also seen a lot of trauma, is authentic as fuck, just like me. And so we just, talk about the issues, the real things that are going on with these kids' lives. It's teenagers, it's young adults, it's college students, it's people in the workforce, it's professionals.
That's
I had
awesome.
a doctor write
awesome.
in. I had a 15-year-old write in. So it's like all over the place. It's very LGBTQ friendly. And it's created this community. It's like the Pod Squad, they call themselves. And they've started group chats now. And they're like helping each other get through stuff. And it's
Very
really become
cool.
this like organically beautiful thing that's based in truth and authenticity. And like, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about it. Cause I see some shit, my co-host has seen some shit, and we don't have time. People are dying. We need to get the truth out. We need to just talk about how life is and not sugarcoat it.
I love it. I love it. And tell us a little bit about your co-host on your podcast. What trauma did she go through?
Oh, girl. I mean,
in a
I'm a
nutshell.
public eye, and it's very, that's what I think we relate to each other so well, and we've become best friends through the absurdity we've seen. I mean, hers is parental trauma too. I don't want to get into it. It's not even all that stuff. And you can listen to Libby like Queen if you want to find out.
Okay.
But she actively works as a story producer in reality TV. She works on the Kardashian show. She does like a lot of stuff in that space. I know, girl, but she's seen a lot of shit just in her professional life. But growing up was extremely tumultuous for her too, in all sorts of areas. And so combined, we've seen a lot of stuff, and we're just able to give perspectives and keep it real. And she is like empath almost, like, because that's, I think, also why she's my best friend, because I'm so authentic, and her and I work really well together because of that. But anyone else comes along, she's like, I see right through.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
So
that's a good team.
You're kind of looking here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah.
You've had enough of this old thing.
And actually, sorry, my ADD's coming through, but my best friend, Chelsea, my co-host, she's also the reason I started sharing my story publicly too.
Amen.
She was a recent friend.
Good for her.
I met her in my early 30s. She wound up just moving into the apartment above me in the cockroach apartment complex.
Cockroach apartment.
And we just instantly bonded, and she didn't know who I was at all. She didn't know my name. She didn't know the story. She's from like Beach Town, Florida, had no clue, but she wound up working at her reality show company with a bunch of people that I just randomly knew from high school. And so I wound up at her work holiday party, and they're like, how do you know Buttafuoco? She's like, what do you mean? Butta what? Butta who? They're like, you don't know who this is? And it became this like thing. And so I kind of started sharing my story with her more, and then started just investigating more of like, the story, because she's a story producer. And so I was like, girl, I got like old tapes, I got archives, like, just news articles about Amy Fisher being a prostitute. Like, where's the madam? She had a madam. The madam went missing. And we started like piecing this story of like, is this a bigger story than we think? And is this, cops are being dirty, and there's like, what's going on here? And so we started almost wanting to create a documentary about it all, and not even necessarily telling my dive, thrive, and survive. It was more so like, let's look at the case with different eyes and see what's going on. Still trying to battle with the police department getting files. Still have not given them to me. They give me excuses years and years and years after, in terms of like, they don't have videotape of Amy Fisher and her confession. Who doesn't have that? Anyway, but she's the reason.
Dirty cops.
Right. Oh yeah. They questioned her for 8 hours without her parents there. And she was not
she was a minor.
Adult, right. And her parents actually called the police to file a missing persons report, and they said, now call back tomorrow, while they were in her custody.
Oh my gosh.
So there was shit going
Shame on
that kind of stuff. Where my bestie Chelsea, she's the story producer, she's the like, what are we doing? And so we kind of started getting into that, and then the story kind of like evolved, like, well, maybe this is bigger, girl. Maybe this is like about you navigating your childhood through this lens, but then being a human being and like healing through it. And so she's actually one of the reasons I started publicly speaking about it. I was speaking about it at AA. I was speaking about it at the mental hospital panel,
in safe places,
but not putting it out there for the public to rip me apart for.
Yeah.
Right.
But she started that for me.
That's awesome.
It sounds like you're sitting in the fire mode, kind of went in stages. You didn't tell the whole world at first, and there's no need to ever tell the whole world. But finding, I
wasn't about to tell the world that.
Well, yeah.
But now I am.
Here we are.
Yeah.
But you had to be ready.
Yeah.
Right?
So in the survival stage, in terms of sitting in the fire, just some tips for, the audience is understand you got to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Ideally a trusted or a trusted licensed therapist, because if they go blab, they lose their license.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of the benefit there. You can talk about your garbage and sit in the fire with a licensed therapist. They go tell somebody inappropriately.
They're done.
They're toast.
Susan
They lose their
Forward,
career.
my sister's therapist, she was fired because she blabbed.
No.
Oh, is that
Nicole's,
right?
Yeah, Nicole's like one of her sessions or many sessions. Yeah. So she lost her license.
Okay. And these, therapists that do that deserve to lose their license.
For sure.
So if you can't afford a therapist, there's all kinds of free resources, but at least journal. Get it out.
Yeah.
That was huge.
That's huge.
Because I never wrote anything down. Because if you don't want it found, don't write it down.
Yeah.
And I was terrified and thinking I'm going to be the next Anne Frank and someone's going to find my diary and then it's going to be a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I didn't find the power of healing in writing until I would say these last 2 years. Because now in school, I have to write a bunch of school papers and I'm in school for psychology. And so they highly suggest you talk about your own family of origin. And I'm like, you fucks. Because it's so deep. It's not just topical trauma here. Like people literally have written dissertations on my family and you want me to write this in 3 weeks?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you got to kind of find what's right for you,
Right.
whether it be
But it's
journaling or not, a therapist or not. Make sure it's a good one. And
if you don't find a good therapist right away, don't be discouraged. Keep looking.
Thank you for saying that, because remember when I shared that with you with the therapist here in Dana Point, who's no longer around, but I don't know if he's dead, but he's not around anymore. But yeah, I didn't, when I went to go see him, I didn't seek out therapy again. And then 10 years later,
Right.
I ended up here. So,
and by here, she means a mental hospital.
Like in the psych unit,
Right.
popping Klonopin and drinking my red wine, and not a good combination. And so it's kind of, and to kind of bring it down a little bit, it's like shopping for a car.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you'll go to CarMax to go to a Honda or Toyota, whatever. It's like you got to sit in the car, you got to test drive it, so yeah, don't get discouraged, and if it's not a good fit, maybe you have a few sessions. If it's not a good fit, that person's like required ethically to give you 3 referrals. So, don't give up. If you get a sour therapist, please don't give up. And then Randy and we were talking about EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And that is phenomenal for trauma victims. So I highly recommend that too. But when seeking that out, make sure they have like 2 or 3 years under their belt of experience, because it's pretty intense.
Yeah. And what we're talking about here, we haven't said it, but I think it needs to be said. We're talking about the root problem of trauma is triggers. Yeah. And those triggers that set you off to do something stupid. Yep. Self-medicate, shoot somebody, something. And I was sitting in San Quentin, and this one guy said, I grew up in this horribly poor family. We had no money. I was greatly, embarrassed about our situation. I've had inmates say my mom was pimping my sister out for drugs. Just horrible, heart-wrenching stories that they grow up in these. Some of these inmates grow up in these families that are so dysfunctional is an understatement. And then one guy says, I got up in the morning, I went out to a fair and a guy laughed at me and I reacted by killing him. So that's the point is the triggers. And when you're healing, you're in the survival mode as you hear the name Amy Fisher, and here you are not throwing furniture. Right. Okay.
No. But it still has a twin.
Or eggs.
And I still don't buy a Fisher Price toy. And when I hear for Fisher Investments commercial on, I turn that off.
Okay.
But I can handle it now.
You can handle it.
You want to drink a bottle of wine.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And that's important that you say that, because it does still have a little bit of an edge, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
I never would have thought that. Any
Fisher name is really Fisher Nuts. No, thank you.
Really?
Yeah, wow.
Okay.
Yeah, see, but you're not reactive anymore. And that's how the healing
zings inside. Goes,
but you know how to respond instead of react.
Right. Yeah. And that's a huge thing for me. I've learned how to regulate my emotions. Yeah. That's something that seems to be the biggest, I think, of my problems is from all this. I never understood how to regulate my emotions.
What I love is that you're aware of your triggers. Yeah. What you just kind of modeled. and showed everybody is, yeah, I do have triggers. Here's what they are. I used to throw furniture or drink a bottle of wine, whatever, behaviors that are not healthy.
Right.
And now you're handling it in healthy ways. They still kind of zing. That's fair. Totally cool. But the core of the survival mode is to be aware of your triggers and not let them set you off to do something you were going to regret later.
Exactly.
And I think too, because of everything that I've processed and the work that I've done, all my like PTSD memories don't come flooding back as hard or as fast either.
Yeah.
So like, let's say I see a news van. I used to
me too.
flip book of every traumatic memory that I had from my mother's, that picture of the back of my mother's book with the bullet hole in her head, to paparazzi, to dead in jail, serial killers, all Madonna, even just seeing a news van. Now I see a news van and I'll maybe think of the egg throwing story, or stuff like that, to where the triggers don't send me to that 100 level place. And then that's the stuff that makes me want to escape. Those feelings inside of that. There's just the physiological feelings even. I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
But now I can still get those feelings, but they don't last very long.
Yeah.
I'll smell the flower, blow out the candle, put on a fucking egg.
I used to be totally triggered by news vans, and now it's like, I've known the ladies here, local newscasters for years, Vicky Vargas, Michelle Geely, and it's really funny. So now it's like every time I see a news van, I'm like, are you in there?
Is that my girl?
I just want to say hi. Whereas before I was like where I'm like, oh my God, like this. Exactly.
Yeah.
Talking about triggers, a trigger can show up in a variety of ways, right? Like a rape victim who may have been assaulted in a car. All of a sudden you see a red car and that could be a trigger, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when my trigger, what sent me into the psych unit was my wedding was canceled 4 days before. That was a trigger that I needed to face all the pain, not just Nicole. And then recently in 2017, I was assaulted by my ex-boyfriend's son. And I couldn't look at a Mercedes, a 190 specifically. I could not look at a handicap placard. I could not go into the city of San Clemente.
Wow.
Anybody who was 6'5" with a black beard or like a mohawk or whatever. I mean, he just kind of went in and out. I was so triggered.
Wow.
And I did EMDR and it totally helped. And then the other day, this is a testament to this. The other day I'm sitting at work and I'm like, my boss looks really familiar. Like, who does he look like? And he looked like my ex-boyfriend's son. And I was like, I've seen him numerous times. And I'm like, it just hit me and I wasn't reactive. So pay attention to the triggers, process them, talk to somebody about them, acknowledge them. And just, the more you address it, the more you talk about it, the more desensitized it becomes. Yeah.
Really beautifully said.
And my boss doesn't know that. I don't know if I should tell him. You look like the guy who was
going to find out now.
He's going to find out now.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a balance, when with triggers, in kind of buttoning up this part of the conversation. There's times where the triggers happen and we ignore them. We stuff them down. We just get in that, freaked out mode. The other side is where we act out on them, flip the furniture, drink the bottle of wine, shoot somebody, stab somebody. I mean, those are the extremes. Right. The healthy balance is in the middle where you're aware of them. There's kind of a zing with it. That's okay. But they pass harmlessly through the mind, meaning they don't cause bad reaction, self-medication, but they are acknowledged, So in other words, you can talk about these things, A, acknowledging them, and B, handling them in a way that doesn't add more trauma.
Right.
Is that fair?
I think that's super fair. I notice now currently my main trigger is any moment of imperfection. So I just finished a semester at school, right? And I got a 98%. And my first instinct was, why wasn't it 100? What the fuck? And I internally started burning. My face started getting red. My chest started getting tight. The Real Housewives showed up. They started calling me stupid. And then, girl, you could have tried 98% at Pepperdine University, getting a master's degree in psychology. 98%, girl. And my inner critic and my inner parent sometimes, though, I'm still working on her, but it can be so powerful. And I can get stuck in those zing. And then I zing and then I stay there and then I'm ruminating. And it's like, girl, chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
Or be nicer to myself. I would never treat a child or a friend the way I treat myself sometimes. And so I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of healing and I've done a lot of processing, but I'm still horrible to myself sometimes. And I recognize it. Level. And I try to combat it with positivity. And I really do now. I don't just believe the negative thoughts anymore. I definitely do the work to combat it, but it's still hard. And it still, takes me a while. And I might go and get a chicken sandwich rather than a bottle of booze, but I'm still figuring that out too. But, it's still, but even in that moment, as much work that I have done, I still have a lot more to do. And I'm thankful that a 98% in a class is what's causing my problems.
Yeah, exactly. You're lucky. You're lucky.
I'm extremely grateful for that.
Yeah, give yourself a hug.
Right.
Yeah, we all need to give ourselves some grace.
Yeah.
We're all so hard on ourselves.
Well, I mean, Jesus. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but this perfectionism stems from early childhood stuff, you know? So it's like I'm recognizing, at least now I can go back and be like, oh, this is because when this happened, you felt the need to be this way and this way, this way, this way. And it's just like, I've done a lot of inner child work and a lot of inner adolescent work. A lot of my particular problems happen to be, coincide with my childhood trauma. That's not everybody on this earth, but at least I'm able to
you have a good reason.
it. And not necessarily use it as an excuse, but maybe more of an explanation and like, okay, girl, but like, you don't have to react this way. You're not in that old situation anymore where you need to be perfect. No one's taking your picture, girl. One of my best friends had to be like, girl, because I didn't lose my virginity until I was 24 because I was terrified someone was going to videotape it and sell it. And so literally my best friend was like, girl, no one's taking your picture. Go get fucked. And I did. It was great. It was fine. Nothing happened, but it was just like one of those, like sometimes because of where I come from, I feel like all eyes are on me or just, it's this big thing. And it's like, girl, humble yourself.
Yeah.
Chill
You're
out.
not there anymore.
You're a human being on this planet that's pulled down by the same gravitational pull as everybody else.
Right.
Chill out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Sweating now. She's sweating.
I'm saying my hair is frizzing.
So is mine.
We're getting worked up over here.
Well, I was going to quote Jesus. I still will. I mean, you said something there that kind of, speaking of triggers, triggered this thought. And that is Jesus said, love your neighbors yourself. And everybody thinks, well, loving my neighbors, I got to do all this and please you and please you and please you. And, all that. It's also, well, you should be kind to our neighbor, but also the big core that I'm getting at is being good to yourself, self-care, and self-medication. If you don't care for yourself, you're going to self-medicate. To me, it seems like it's going to be one or the other. And one thing about self-medication, we've talked about the drinking, the drugs, but one person who went through recovery told me that she got drunk off her ass every night. And that sounds really awful. I mean, the judgmental me would say, oh, that's really bad. That's really wrong. And harsh judgment. And she says, no, because I was going to commit suicide and I was too drunk to walk to the bridge. So don't be judgmental. People are self-medicating
for a reason.
In all kinds of ways, workaholism, fanatical politics, fanatical religions. This is all self-medication to mask the pain. What I love about you, Jessie, and your story is you're just very real. You tell it the way it really is. I'd love to meet your podcast co-host someday because she sounds super cool too. And thanks for talking about your podcast. But it's just this whole idea of being kind to others and self-respect. And being aware of what does trigger you and not stuffing them down, but not flipping the tables either.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the survival state.
If we don't love ourselves, how can we love other people? If we don't like ourselves, how can we even like other people? There's a difference between love and like, right? So, and you know what? You just said too, like, I'm a work in progress. I'm not perfect. You know what? We all should be a work in progress. Otherwise you just stay the same and stay stagnant, right? Right.
Yeah. And there are a lot of kids at Pepperdine that are jealous that you got a 98. I would have been one of them.
I don't think I would have gotten a 98. I got a 98 at Argosy.
Y'all really let me in here? Are you sure? My essay to get in was like, oh my God, I can't even, because it was honest. I was like, listen, I went to school once at UCSB. And while that happened, my father went to jail. The woman that tried to murder my mother got out of jail. My brother went to rehab. My mother went to rehab. And I still pulled off a 3.8 8 GPA.
Wow.
So I'm sure. And I was like, I lost my mind. I'm now in recovery. I was like, so even then I was a great student. So I have full confidence in myself now that I'm actually on a path of healing and authenticity, that I'm going to be a great student here. And they let me in.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I was like, really? You should have.
Well,
It's awesome.
so in our next episode, we're going to get into thriving, because I know you're doing some super cool stuff. We want that, the next episode is where we're going to really brag about your accomplishments. Some of them might have been, given away already. That's okay. But anything else on just survive? Any other tips you want to give everybody who just is kind of coming out of the dive stage and in that survive stage that we haven't covered? Have we done a good job
I think
covering
the
it?
biggest thing maybe we haven't covered yet is allowing patience for yourself.
Yeah.
A little bit of grace.
A little bit of grace,
Yeah.
a little bit of compassion. Treat yourself like you would treat a 5-year-old that makes mistakes or that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't happen quickly, at least not in my experience.
It's a process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's a process.
you just got to.
It's a journey, not a marathon.
Exactly.
Right?
There's no finish
Or
line.
a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah. Enjoy
Right.
the race. There's no
Yeah.
finish line.
Yeah.
So.
Beautiful. Okay. Tanya, any other survival tips?
No, my biggest one is you got to talk about it. That's my main point. Whatever,
Set the fire.
whatever your it is, it can be on any level. You just got to talk about your it. And if you're really struggling right now, you got to go and talk to somebody now.
Wow.
And also you mentioned too, like with therapy, college students, they need intern hours. And that's what I did during my practicum. And I charged like $15 a session in my practicum. So, if finances are a really huge struggle for you, just reach out to a local college, a university, and, ask for a practicum.
Maybe you'll get me.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thank God you didn't get me.
Well, and talking about you kind of reiterated the same thing, sit in the fire. I was in a setting, I'm going to keep it real anonymous, but a guy admitted for the very first time in his life, and he was probably, I'm guessing 50, that his birth, his existence was a product of a rape.
Wow.
And you should have seen the fear, just the trepidation of him leading up to, do I have courage to admit this for the first time? And when he saw that the group was admiring him and that he was still loved and supported, and that nobody said, oh, that's disgusting, and walked out, none of his imagined fears came true.
Yeah.
He walked out of that room just, I don't know, a whole different person, getting that ugly secret. Who wants to admit that?
Right.
That's about as ugly as it gets.
Yeah.
But he appreciated his mom for, in spite of those horrible situations, that horrible situation, his mom decided to have him anyway. And he had a rough life, I'll just tell you. But just the transition from sitting in the fire and saying, I can't imagine too many things more ugly to sit in the fire about than that kind of admission. It's flat out magical.
Yeah.
It's transformational. It's a spiritual moment. I don't care how you define.
But also see the community also gave him a safe place to talk about these things. Just like what we're doing here, this is a safe place for people to share their stories. Right. So it's and I've always said that in my domestic violence advocacy, as well as mental health, where we need to create safety, like a safety forum for people to talk about their darkest secrets, and to appreciate them and value them. And also, more importantly, respect them. It takes courage.
Yeah. And he felt the love and respect for him.
Yeah.
And when he realized that he had value from the people around him.
Yeah. He felt
Transformational.
safe. That's so neat.
So
I love that.
Let's talk more about thriving in the next episode on post-traumatic thriving, where we talk about dive, survive, or thrive.
The choice is yours.
All right.
Thanks for supporting our podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on your favorite social media. For books, merchandise, or to donate, visit CoreIQ.com. Post-Traumatic Thriving is produced by CoreIQ, a nonprofit with a mission to teach the life skills we all need but are not taught in school. CoreIQ and the Post-Traumatic Thriving podcast are for informational purposes only and do not provide medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your licensed medical and mental health care providers.